Hello and welcome to the Superhero Hub. I'm Sam,
I'm not.
and today we're going to be opening up. No, not the Ark of the Covenant. Tell them what it is.
Superhero Files.
Oh, yeah, and what page are we at?
We are at the Shadow King.
Yep, so you'll know the Shadow King has been featured heavily in the show Legion on FX as the main antagonist of the season. So we thought, for those people who want a more in-depth uh, kind of,
Run over who he is.
yeah, we thought we've got to open up the files. So yeah, more commonly, the Shadow King is known as Amahl Farouk, who is an Egyptian man who is a psychic, and you'll see how that fits in later on. So the Shadow King himself is an entity of pure psychic energy which feeds on the hatred of humanity within a person, and it manifests itself by possessing the body of mutants, generally mutants with psychic abilities or psychic mutations. His first appearance as Farouk was in Uncanny X-Men issue 117 in January 1979. He was featured in New Mutants in issue 34 in December 1987, and had been revealed as possessing Karma, who you'll all know is a founding member of said New Mutants, and he'd been in possession of her since issue 6. So, yeah, and he continued to appear throughout the run of the Uncanny X-Men uh, until, well, for whenever, and is first referred to as the Shadow King in issue 265 in August 1990.
Yeah, so he's most famously known as Legion, kind of touched on as being a guy that dwells in the what's it called?
Astral Plane.
The astral plane. That's it. Where he is far more powerful than he would be in everyday life. Amahl Farouk is a big, pretty fat Egyptian bloke who, that's if he fought Wolverine, for example, will go down in a second because he got his powers. He can take him to the astral plane. There is basically functions as an all-powerful god, except when he comes up across someone equally as powerful as him, like Charles Xavier. Um, he's popped up down the years in the comics as well. He's been a former Psylocke. There's been an issue he was in um, Uncanny X Force as a member of the Brotherhood that they had there.
Mhm. That is completely true. So yeah, the Shadow King is an entity of the astral plane and has existed since the dawn of humanity. He is an ethereal demon who enslaves the bodies of telepaths and psychics predominantly, and uses their powers to enslave other people around him, therefore enforcing his influence amongst people. Because the kind of temptation being a psychic or a telepath kind of holds, the kind of invasion of privacy, being able to read people's minds, control and put thoughts in their head. An effect of that is obviously greed, hedonism, and a lack of self-control, and that is what draws the Shadow King out predominantly, and allows him to kind of pick out people he wants to leech onto. And generally, long term hosts turn out to be kind of morbidly obese as a result of that, hence greed and lack of control, as you
Right.
know
It's
from
like a
Legion.
Yeah, right. It's like a physical representation of gluttony.
Yeah, very metaphorical. His origins are unclear, but he is a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of human consciousness, spawned by humanity's first nightmare. Uh, as Amal, as Amal Farouk's powers, he psychically controlled those around him feeding on the shadows in their soul and merging with the Shadow King, of whom has transferred from host to host since the dawn of humanity. So that's how. I mean, he's eternal anyway, but if he wants to exist outside the astral plane, he needs a host. So he's kind of moved from people to people all through time until obviously the more recent time, as in now. So in 1931, Amahl Farouk was working for two of Adolf Hitler's special agents, Wolfgang von Strucker and Geist, and he planned to dethrone King Edward and replace him with someone else who kind of shared Hitler's ideals. He conducted a mystical ceremony and accidentally brought back to that time period Rachel Summers, who at that time was in possession of the Phoenix Force, and Shadowcat, who you know as.
Keith Bride.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first instinct of the Shadow King was to jump from Amahl and possess Rachel Summers, and they faced off in the astral plane where they battled, and eventually Kitty Pryde was able to destroy him by using the Sword of Scones. But obviously, that wasn't enough to destroy him. He was merely scattered until a time of which he could kind of regain his powers. So Farouk was a crime lord in Egypt where he first came across. I mean, he managed to get himself together, get back into Farouk, and then obviously being a crime lord in Egypt, he came along Charles Xavier, a young Charles Xavier when he was there. Obviously, he gets robbed by the storm, and he goes, gets his wallet back, and then he's kind of struck by psionic energy and is like, what's going on here? And he kind of gets led to Amahl Farouk, to kind of sits down and is like, look, there's another telepath near us, I suggest you kind of, move away, like get out of here. But and then he kind of, because akin with their powers, he tries to convince Xavier to kind of come to the dark side, as it was, and kind of share his ideals and kind of use his abilities for more nefarious purposes. When Charles,
Charles Xavier basically represent like the Shadow King's golden meal ticket. If there's any one mutant he could want to be with, it would be him. It's kind of like an X-Men version of the Venom symbiote or something. It always wants Spider-Man. Like, if Farouk could get his way, he would hook up with Xavier.
Yeah, well, technically, if you look at it, generally, Charles Xavier is pretty much the only one who could match the Shadow King's power. So to take him out, I mean, no one would be able to stop him. So yeah, he refused, and they assumed astral form and fought in the astral plane, and with obviously Charles Xavier defeating him. Now this is quite a big thing, because obviously Farouk was chronologically Xavier's first kind of time he faced a mutant who was kind of really using their abilities for really kind of bad things, and that kind of led him to create the X-Men. So over the years he's had kind of toils with various psychic people. If you'd like to give a quick rundown of that.
Not really.
Oh, well, Psylocke and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we could, but the thing, why I say not really is inevitably it always kind of ends up the same. Like, I think the Legion, in my opinion, the Legion TV show has done something far more interesting with him. Either because inevitably it will end up with, I'm the Shadow King, I'm going to take over this powerful mutant like Psylocke, like Charles Xavier, whoever it may be, and I'm going to rule the roost. But then he fails and they trap him, but inevitably he gets out again.
Yeah, he managed.
To be fair, I mean, spoilers for the latest episode of Legion, but that's basically what we saw. I mean, he got trapped in his mind again, but he broke out at the end. Yeah. It's the same thing again.
Generally, kind of bonds to people and kind of gets kind of put away, but then eventually kind of there's a resurgence to be kind of different people end up facing him. So the astral plane's kind of his domain where he is powerful, but outside of there he can be in kind of mortal form, as it was. He can be quite damaged by magic, people whom wield magic and really other kind of means. So yeah,
Well, yeah, I mean, he's pretty vulnerable because he is just a big Egyptian bloke, but he's so powerful mentally that you probably couldn't really get anywhere near him.
so yeah, I mean that's really, I mean in terms of powers, it's telepathy and other psychic abilities. Not that they've kind of really been kind of really seriously kind of ventured into, but yeah, generally he kind of gets in mental battles with other psychics to try and take them out the game so he can be like the most powerful one there. So then he can pretty much have free reign over the world, but obviously he's always second to Charles Xavier, who's the most powerful telepath ever, apparently. So yeah.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, depending on whether Jean's got the Phoenix Force and whether she's really a telepath, blah blah blah. But essentially, yes.
Yeah. So that has been up to now all the big facts and need to know things about Amahl Farouk,
Yeah,
also known as the Shadow King. So to kind of, yeah, he is, as I explained in Legion, is a parasite, but yeah, he is kind of, he is always looking for a host body to materialize himself in the modern world outside the astral plane, so he can, I guess, take over any kind of supervillain's dream.
and Legion's probably his first real big exposure. I mean, he was in. I remember he was in an episode of the old '90s cartoon. I don't know if he's been in another one since then, but to be honest, he's something I never really thought they'd touch on. The Shadow thing. I didn't think we'd ever get to it. I thought maybe if a movie was ever going to do it, it might have been one with McAvoy, but I doubt whether it would do it. I certainly didn't believe they'd do it on the show. I remember I thought pretty early when I was watching Legion that, oh, it's the Shadow King, and now I talked myself out of it because I didn't think they'd do it, but they did.
Yeah.
And I think for every Shadow King story I've read, Legion's done it better.
It's kind of interesting because he's one of them characters where he's kind of really not kind of heavily featured. Well, he was featured heavily in the Uncanny X-Men for its
Yeah.
run,
Not,
but I
not
mean,
really, not really. He's not. He's popped up for an issue here or there, but he's not Magneto. He's not. He's not a long-term character, and part of the problem with that is, like I say, there's not really much place you can go. It's a cool idea. It's a cool concept that he's this demon king that lurks in the shadow realm, but like I say, inevitably you're not going to go there very often, and when you do, you know how it's going to end.
and he kind of follows the formula of someone who is kind of minor, but has like a big effect in the sense that really he was the one who made Charles Xavier kind of make the X-Men. I mean, really, without him,
Mhm.
I mean, the X-Men wouldn't have manifested itself. I mean, for a while, if not at all.
And he adds an extra layer to Xavier as well because their battles in the astral plane can show Xavier as a fighter, at least in some sense. Where his big counterpart is Magneto, obviously, but they ain't ever gonna fight.
It's kind of, it was kind of like that in Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse, when at the end when he was facing Apocalypse, it was like they were fighting mentally, and then you had Apocalypse obviously overpower him, grow to be big. That's kind of the scale of the kind of battle. So yeah, that is all. That is the 411, the skinny, the big facts on the Shadow King. So hopefully you're all a little more educated and you know a little more about him. This has been the Superhero Files. I'm Sam,
I'm not.
and we'll see you in the next episode.